blasting, billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
I'm Tom Bain, and this is Wine, Money, and Song. If you're interested in wines and wanting to find out the best values, please subscribe. We are approaching the end of the summer, and generally the summer, you drink a lot of light, crisp white wines and softer, lighter-bodied red wines. So the last few weeks, I decided to raid my wine cellar and start drinking some Bordeaux's. I was getting a little lethargical, so I said, let's go back to the motherlode there and drink some Bordeaux. So today, I'm going to be reviewing 10 wines I've had from Bordeaux in the last few weeks. 3 of the wines are from the 2020, from the 2000 vintage. 2 of the wines are from 2019. 2 of the wines are from 2009, and 2 of the wines are from 1995. And all these wines came from my cellar except for the 2019s, which I just picked up retail. Because right now the 2019s and some of the 2020s are on the retail shelves. So hopefully you will get some insight from these wines. So the 10 wines that I'm reviewing today are from the 2000 vintage: La Rive Aubryon, Calon Segur, Cantemerle, and that's all 2000s. 2019 Chateau Pierre from Saint-Emilion, 2019. And the second wine of Montrose, La Dame de Montrose, 2019. And from 2009, Capburn Gascoton, 2009, Saint-Estèphe. And Trinquois Lalande, 2009. And from the 2016, which I didn't mention, the second wine of Brain Cantignac, Baron de Brand, 2016. And the last 2 wines are Ponte Canet, 1995, Pauillac, and Léoville Barton, 1995, Saint Julien. So let's start with the 2000 vintage and those 3 wines. First, when I did the barrel tastings of the 2000s, I spent a good amount of time in Bordeaux, and I was heading back on the final car ride, and my boss, Maurice Latigo, asked me, he said, "So Thomas, what do you think of the 2000 vintage?" And I said, the wines are really tannic. I said, it reminds me of 86 and 96 in a way. But I really think they have the depth of fruit, and they have good acid, and the tannins in these wines are ripe, and they're not dry and bitter. So tasting these wines, they're almost 23 years old now, and they've been aging very, very well. They took a long time to age. I know that Parker came out after 7 or 8 years and said they're all ready to drink, and they weren't. They weren't. They needed the extra time. Now, I know Parker loves tannic wines, and I didn't agree with them that these wines were ready, but a lot of them are rounding out now. So the first wine is 2000 La Rive Aubryon, which is a Grave area, and it's a wine that's really soil-based. It's like drinking a bag of gravelly soil, and it's very, very typical. And it's aged very well, and it's 65% Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's a tannic wine, but a round wine. There's some tobacco, some cedar, and the wine is very rich. And I enjoyed the wine. And the last time I had it probably was 5 years ago, and the wine has really edged higher and higher. It was just very enjoyable. The next one is Calon Segur Saint-Estèphe, 2000. And Caroline Segura is one of the top 3 center staffs. Of course, you have Montrose, which is really regal, very big, ripe, and ages for decades and decades and decades. And you have Casa Estornel, which is really producing very prestigious wines in the last couple of decades. And then you have Caroline Segura, which to me is the more elegant of those 3 wines generally. And the 2000s is a medium-bodied wine. It's not a big, rough, sturdy wine like Montrose's. And there's some finesse to it. It has red fruits to it in relationship to black fruits that Montrose can have a lot of times. Very refined tannins. And the wine is drinking very well right now. And it's medium-bodied. And right to the end, there's a little mint to it. And I really enjoyed that. So that wine was very enjoyable. And the last of the 2000s is Cantamaril Au Medoc, which is a 5th growth. And you want to talk about a reliable wine that's inexpensive, that sells, for $30, $40. Cantamaril is very rich, big, has very fine tannins, some tobacco and spice. And it's 60% Merlot it's 60% Cab, 60% Cab. So it's very, very firm, but very enjoyable, very, very enjoyable. The next wine is Chateau Pierre Saint-Emilion 2019. Now, I never had this wine before. I picked it up, I ordered it from a store in Florida with the La Dame de Montrose 2019. And this wine's been reviewed well, but this wine didn't do anything for me. It just was very blocky and awkward. It's 80% Merlot and 20% Cab Franc. Now, the 2019s are very young, so maybe it needs a little calming down, but I found it to be one-dimensional. And the first few wines, price-wise, La Arrive, I remember, was like $30. The Caroline Segura now, 2000, is probably $150. The Cantamaril is probably $50 a bottle. And the Chateau Pierre, I paid $20, which is very inexpensive. Onward to the second wine of Montrose, La Dame de Montrose, 2019. Now, I buy that wine a lot of times in good vintages. And generally, it has more Merlot in it than the Montrose, but not so this vintage. This vintage, they used a lot of the Merlot for 2019 Montrose. And so it's usually close to that but it's 48% Cabernet this vintage. And that's unusual. And it's 40% of the total production of Montrose went into the second label. So they were very selective with that. And generally, as I said, I buy this wine, the 2000, 2005, 2009, 2015, I've all enjoyed it. This wine was I really didn't get much out of it. And I didn't get a lot of mouthfeel out of it. So I have a feeling it probably needs a couple of years, but I was a little disappointed with that. The next wine is Capburn Gascoton 2009, which is owned by the owners of Caroline Segura. And this vintage has 72% Cabernet in it. And as you know, the center staff soil is clay with some gravel sometimes on top of it, and they make big wines. And this wine is full-bodied, and it's full with red fruit, and it's aging out now a little bit. It's rounding out. The last bottle I had, I thought was a little rough and gruff, but it's really getting some feel in the mouth. And as I said, it's 72% Cabernet. And that cost about $30, $35, I remember. And the next one is Tranquois Lalande 2009, and it's a full-bodied Centestaff, 51% Merlot. So that's different than the Cap Burn, which is mainly has a high Cabernet, and this has mainly Merlot. So it has berryish fruit, red fruit, not really dark, and the wine is round in the palate, and it's very soil driven. You really get the Centestaff out of it. And the next wine is a wine I've never had before either, and it's the second wine of Braine Cantagnac. It's called Baron de Brand, and it's 2016, which many people consider in Bordeaux to be one of the most classic vintages since 2000. And I'm finding these wines are going to need a lot of time to 2016. They're excellent to great, some of these wines, but they're going to need a lot of time in the cellar. But to this wine, which is a Margaux, the wine to me was a little wishy-washy. It was 65% Merlot, and it really didn't have any complexity to it, and it was a little uninteresting to my palate, and I was surprised because it's from a good vintage. Didn't have much mouthfeel to it, and I think I paid $25 for it, maybe 30, and I bought it at Costco. They had it. So the last two wines are from 1995, and Ponte Canet, which is a Pauillac, and they started making good wines right around this vintage, 94, 95, and 96. Alfred, the new ownership there took over, and took them a while because they bought it from the Cruz family, Tesserand. And they started making much better wines. So this wine is very broad-shouldered, and it's a Pauillac, and you really get the soil across with it. It has punch to it, and it's a very good wine. Some of the 95s have a tendency to be a little hollow in the middle, but not this wine. This wine is round. And just to say something about 95s, the first growth 95s, there's a big difference between the first growths and the other wines. They really separated themselves on the left bank. On the right bank, the wines were riper, and they had more roundness in the palate. But I enjoyed the Ponte Canet, and it's an excellent example of Pauillac. The last one is Léopold Barton, 1995, Saint-Julien, and Anthony Barton passed away a short time ago, but makes very, very classic Saint-Juliens, and I'm a big fan, and I have many vintages in my cellar of his wines. The 95 is a very claret style. It's very elegant, very refined, and generally we find Léopold Barton to be a little more full-bodied from Saint-Julien than some of its competitors there, some of their neighbors. And it's very elegant, and I find the wine to be plateauing now. So I would drink this wine in the next 5 years. But as I said, very elegant, streamlined wine, and very, very enjoyable, good length, and has complexities to it. So these are the 10 wines that I yanked out of my cello and bought a few retail, and got my interest back into more serious red wines as the summer's closing in.